Hey everyone, as more and more facts and figures roll in or come in as a consequence or result of the big government lockdowns, the forced and mandated lockdowns in Canada, we're seeing more evidence come to light that yes, the government handled things the wrong way. While they were busy trying to use a blanket statement or a one-size-fits-all approach to lock down basically the whole country as a means to flatten the curve, what they weren't doing is what I had suggested all along. And yeah, the video evidence and the streams I've done in the past have that information and warning contained within them. Because yes, even I, and I'm not a public health expert, I'm not a doctor, an epidemiologist, or a scientist in the realm of viruses, but even I, as a layman, knew that the best thing you could do, the best course of action at the very least, would be to protect the weak, the vulnerable, or those who are susceptible to falling gravely ill or potentially dying from a virus outbreak. I said many times very early on, that is what needs to be done. Protect the vulnerable, the old, the weak. That is what you do. Locking down the entire society and putting millions of people out of work needlessly, I'll add, proved to be an abstract failure, not just for the economic bottom line of millions of Canadians, but for things such as social cohesion and the very pretense of liberty itself. The acknowledged failures are slowly but surely trickling in. And like I say, once this story is presented entirely and you get a much better picture of how big government handled the coronavirus outbreak, you too are going to come to the realization that placing your faith or trust in central planners is a fool's errand. Headline out of CBC News, Health, Canada's proportion of COVID-19 deaths in long-term care double the average of other countries, study shows. More than 80% of deaths in long-term care facilities, far outpacing OECD average, analysis finds. This being reported by Cassandra Skarsky, Canadian Press, June 25th, 2020. So just for those of you who maybe are new to watching my videos, when you see stuff like this, it's originally produced by the Canadian Press or the Associated Press or Reuters, and then news outlets such as the CBC basically just copy and paste the original article and many times offering their own perspective or opinion while doing so. Or should I say political slant or bias. A new study finds the proportion of Canadian COVID-19 deaths that have occurred in long-term care facilities is about twice the average of rates from other developed countries. The analysis released Thursday by the Canadian Institute for Health Information provides a damning snapshot of senior care as of May 25th, when long-term care residents made up 81% of all reported COVID-19 deaths in the country compared to an average of 42% among all countries studied. So yeah, double, not just a little bit higher, but double, which once again speaks volumes in terms of the socialized healthcare system in this country and how well it is in taking care of the weak and the vulnerable. Yet many Canadians love to go around touting or espousing that tired old line that hopefully after this will finally be realized as absolutely false, where Canada has this supreme public or socialized healthcare system. That is absolutely false. And trust me, I have members of my own family who work in the healthcare field who would acknowledge that themselves. Privately, of course, they won't say so publicly because they want to keep their jobs. Now, I'll just point out before I get into reading the rest of this article that my own grandmother has passed away during the COVID-19 outbreak in one of these long-term care facilities. From what I understand, the information I'm hearing so far is it didn't happen as a consequence of contacting or getting the coronavirus or COVID-19, but the information that I have is sparse and definitely not conclusive. So I'm still on the fence as to whether that particular facility did anything wrong. The data compares Canada's record to that of 16 other countries in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The proportion of long-term care deaths ranged from less than 10% in Slovenia and Hungary to 31% in the United States to 66% in Spain. So you get that, right? They're comparing Slovenia, Hungary, and the United States all had lower long-term care deaths than here in Canada. Yes, the United States. You know that country that the media mouthpieces and the politicians keep trying to talk smack about and suggest that their healthcare system or their response was so much more inferior than ours? Well, once again, the numbers speak for themselves. At 5,324, the reported number of long-term care deaths in Canada was near the average, but data varied widely among countries from 28 in Australia to 30,000 in the US, with more than 10,000 in France, Italy, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Researchers point to limitations that prevent some comparisons. Countries vary in COVID-19 testing and reporting practices and their definition of long-term care. In addition, COVID-19 cases are often underreported, and in the case of Italy, data was available from only 52% of the nursing homes operating in the country. Nevertheless, Tracy Johnson, CIHI's Director of Health Systems Analysis and Emerging Issues, said the data offers valuable insight into a tragedy many families, caregivers, and residents have been trying to illustrate since the pandemic began. Johnson said countries that implemented additional long-term care precautions at the same time as standard stay-at-home orders had fewer long-term care infections and deaths. Well, obviously that would suggest that it wasn't the lockdowns per se, right, that had anything to do with it. No, it was that secondary aspect of it, which was implementing additional long-term care precautions. Like, don't try to tie two in together when you know that that's not the case. I mean, that's the thing. Even when these reporters are trying to report on this stuff and give us some numbers or facts, you can see that their political bias is entrenched and embedded right within the article. Even when they're trying to present themselves in neutral in any way. I mean, come on. You heard the information contained within it and the headline, which is to suggest that Canada is doing worse to the tune of double in terms of all the other OECD countries in terms of how many people died in long-term care facilities. But then, you know, as you see in some of the rhetoric espoused subsequent to that, is like very confusing. I myself, even as I'm reading it, I'm trying to figure out what the hell? You're telling me one thing and then maybe a couple paragraphs down, you're basically trying to suggest that everything I just told you was bullshit? Like, what is it? Can you try being a little bit more objective and truthful? That would be really, really nice. I mean, no wonder Canadians don't trust media institutions these days. It's for good reason. I don't either. Anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. I just wanted to point out once again, because the long-term care facility thing, like I say, that was something that I hammered on, not just very early into the coronavirus outbreak, but also continuing on in basically almost every stream that I did during the outbreak. To me, it was just, and like I say, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I like I say, it did not require a tremendous amount of thinking, nor did I feel I had to be a rocket scientist or epidemiologist to figure out that, yes, if there's an outbreak of a virus, then you definitely need to protect the weak and the vulnerable. And obviously the elderly, which usually represent both. But like I said, that is not what took place in this country. Or not properly. Like I say, I'm not going to use a blanket statement like the media does. I'll acknowledge there's probably been some facilities in this country who did an exceptional or an excellent job. And kudos and congratulations to those. But see, that's the thing. It would have been those who were in charge of those institutions, if they had the freedom to make that choice to be more preventative or proactive, then once again, but that's the beauty of having the freedom to do so, rather than a one-size-fits-all or blanket approach, which is what governments tend to do. Big government bureaucracy, mandates, or one-size-fits-all approaches, I don't know, like I say, folks, how many times it's got to happen before you come to realize that it's just a terrible way to deal with any situation or circumstance. Well, actually, I shouldn't say any circumstance or situation. I suppose you could find some situations where a one-size-fits-all approach or blanket statement may very well be conducive. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe if an asteroid was heading towards the Earth and it was going to land in central Canada, it'd probably be a good idea to say everyone in central Canada to get the hell out of Dodge, right? I could see that being a blanket statement that would be proper or pertinent for that particular situation. But once again, would you require government to tell you that? No, you would just have to know that the threat is imminent along with your death if you stay in place. And most people, or should I say all people at that point in time, would have self-preservation mode kick in and they do the right thing regardless of whether they were told to do so by big government or not. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.